I never thought I'd end up in a place like this. Most mornings, I still woke up expecting the smell of hay and the low, steady hum of cows outside my window. That's what 37 years of ranch life does to a woman. I used to joke that the pasture was my backyard and the wind in Amarillo was my soundtrack. After my husband died, I stayed. Everyone expected me to sell the ranch, retire somewhere quiet, and rest. But I wasn't ready to leave the only place that ever felt like home. And besides, Brandon, my only son, he always said he'd take over someday. "I'll keep it running, Ma," he used to say. "It's part of who we are." And I believed him. God help me, I did. He didn't come around every week, but when he did, he'd bring coffee from that place in town I liked. He'd check the mailbox, refill the grain bins, sometimes fix a broken hinge on the barn door. He wasn't perfect, never was, but he was mine. My boy. My blood. I kept things tidy for him. I stayed on top of the bills, even with these arthritis-flared fingers. I made sure the paperwork was in order. Land titles, insurance, taxes, all labeled and sorted just how he liked it. He used to call me the ranch manager, and it made me chuckle every time. I remember thinking, I may be getting old, but at least I still matter. At least I'm still needed. And Lord, I wanted that to stay true. I didn't want to be a burden. That was my greatest fear, more than death, more than sickness being in the way. So when Brandon said, "Ma, maybe you ought to slow down a bit, you've done enough," I smiled and nodded. Because I thought it came from love. I didn't know that was the beginning of being phased out. If you'd told me right then that I was walking into the first steps of being erased from my own life, I wouldn't have believed you. Not from him, not from my son. But now, sitting in this beige-walled nursing home where the air smells like bleach and boiled peas, I can't help but wonder, was I ever anything more to him than a signature waiting to be moved? It started small, just like most betrayals do. After the spell I had last spring, what the doctor called a minor stroke, Brandon got serious. He drove in from Dallas looking all business, pressed slacks and Bluetooth in his ear, talking to someone about permits and commercial zoning. He didn't even sit down before saying, "Ma, we gotta talk." I figured he was worried. I'd been dizzy, slurring a bit maybe. I knew I'd scared him. So I said, "Don't worry, baby. I'm still kicking." But he didn't smile. Instead, he pulled out a folder with a bunch of papers and said, "It's time we think long term. You can't be out here by yourself anymore. That ranch is too much, too dangerous." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like I hadn't managed just fine for years without him. Still, I listened. He talked about assisted living, just temporary, of course. A place where folks can check on you. Make sure you're eating right, getting your meds. He made it sound like a spa. I didn't want to go. God knows I didn't. But when your child looks you in the eye and says, "I just want what's best," what can you do? So I nodded, and I signed. Some document he slid across the table. He said it was just to let him handle the bills while I was away. "Just for convenience," he said. "You'll be back before you know it." That was the first lie. When the van came to pick me up, he didn't even ride with me. Said he had a call. Said he'd swing by next weekend. The nursing home, well, it ain't what he promised. Not even close. The walls are yellowed, and the carpet smells like wet mop. The staff tries, but they're overworked, and half the folks here don't know what day it is. I sit near the window and pretend I'm just visiting, but the calendar keeps flipping, and no one comes. Brandon stopped calling after the second week. I told myself he was busy. Important people have schedules. But a few nights ago, I overheard a nurse say, "Her son? Oh, he already listed the property. Got a buyer lined up next month." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a rest stop. This was a removal. I stopped counting the days after the third week. At first, I kept a little notepad by the window. Every morning, I'd mark a line like fence posts in my mind, something solid to hold on to. But they started to blur. The nurse forgot to bring me my slippers one day. The oatmeal came cold the next. The light in the hallway kept flickering like it was trying to say something nobody could hear. I didn't say much those days. No one really noticed. The ladies in the day room were kind enough, but they talked to the television more than each other. Some of them cried out in the middle of the night. Others just stared past me, like I wasn't even there. I sat by the window mostly, pretending I was watching birds, but really I was trying not to think. Then I saw it. On the staff computer, in the hallway. A real estate listing. My ranch, my house, my land. Front porch, split rail fence, windmill, clear as day. Priced at $960,000. Hot property, under contract, it said. That's when something cracked. Not loud, not big, just cracked. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I went back to my room and stared at the beige walls, the scratchy blanket, the little plastic pitcher of water beside the bed. That's all I had left. That and a body that still worked well enough to be kept alive, but apparently not trusted. He sold it. Brandon sold our ranch. Without telling me. Without even asking. I thought maybe there'd be a call, an explanation. Maybe he'd say he needed the money. Maybe he thought I'd never notice. But no call came. That night, I lay in bed listening to the heater wheeze. Janine, the night nurse, stopped by to check vitals. She smiled. Her hands were warm. She tucked the blanket under my feet. "You okay, Miss D?" I almost said yes, but I didn't. I just said, "He sold my whole life for less than $1 million." She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me a moment. Then she said, "You're still here. That means it's not over." And I don't know why, but I believed her, even if I didn't know how yet. I never meant to show Janine the papers. Truth is, I didn't want anyone knowing how much of a fool I'd been. But one night after dinner, I pulled out the folder Brandon left behind. It was tucked in the drawer under my socks, his neat little stack of legal forms I'd signed with shaky hands and a trusting heart. I didn't even understand half of what I was signing at the time. Janine walked in just as I was thumbing through them. "You all right, Miss D?" she asked. I tried to hide the folder, but she saw. She didn't pry, just sat down on the edge of my bed like she always did when she sensed I needed more than pills. "I signed something," I said. "I thought it was temporary, just to help with the bills." She reached for her glasses. "Do you mind if I take a look?" I hesitated, then handed her the papers. She read them slowly. Her brow tightened. "This isn't temporary, Miss D. It's a durable power of attorney. You gave him full authority, medical, financial, everything." I stared at her, the words hitting like cold water, but I didn't. I wasn't thinking straight. I had just come out of the hospital. Janine nodded. "Exactly. That matters." She told me about an elder law attorney she knew. Ms. Cordova said she helped another resident fight something similar. 2 days later, we made the call. Janine set it up. She even wheeled me into the rec room so I could talk in private. Ms. Cordova was sharp as a tack. Within 5 minutes, she spotted 3 irregularities in the documents. No second witness, no medical capacity review, and signatures made while I was on blood thinners known to affect cognition. In her words, "It won't hold up in court, not in Texas." I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. We started proceedings quietly. Brandon didn't know. Not yet. But I knew. And I wasn't just some old woman waiting to die anymore. I was Dolores Ramos again. Head of her own house, daughter of ranchers and mother to a son who had forgotten who raised him. But maybe, just maybe, I was about to remember who I was too. I didn't tell Brandon. Not when Ms. Cordova filed the paperwork to revoke the power of attorney. Not when the court approved my motion for independent capacity evaluation. And not when the bank reinstated my sole control over the remaining funds in my name. No, I didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing I was fighting back. Instead, I focused on what mattered. Janine helped me open a new account. I transferred every cent I could salvage, about $240,000, tucked away like a seed I planned to plant somewhere better. She also helped me draft a new will. No lawyers from Brandon's firm, no advisors he recommended. Just me, Janine, and Miss Cordova at a folding table in the rec room with a notary and 2 witnesses from the staff. It felt almost ceremonial. I crossed out Brandon's name, replaced it with Janine's, not just as beneficiary, but as daughter. I didn't care what blood said. Blood didn't tuck me in at night or remind me to drink water. Blood didn't hold my hand when I forgot how to breathe after seeing my ranch online like a piece of merchandise. Janine did. I left her everything, the remaining funds, my jewelry, what was left of the cattle co-op shares, even my great-grandmother's recipe box. I told her, these belong to someone who cares. She cried when she signed. I didn't. I'd cried enough for a lifetime. I also made one more decision, quiet but final. I called Miss Cordova and asked if we could set up a charitable fund, a small one, just to start, with my name on it. Something for older women like me, the ones who gave everything to their families and found themselves discarded when they became inconvenient. I called it the Second Harvest Fund. I didn't need Brandon to pay for what he'd done. He'd already lost something more than money. He lost me, and I found something better than revenge. I found peace in silence. And a daughter who didn't share my name, but shared something much rarer, respect. I passed on a Thursday. It wasn't dramatic. No tubes or flashing monitors, just me, tucked under a soft quilt Janine had brought from her house. The morning light came through the window just right, warming my face the way Texas sun always did. Janine was there, holding my hand, telling me it was okay to rest, and I did. No lawyers came knocking, no tearful phone calls from Brandon. He didn't even know. Not until a week later. The funeral was small, just how I wanted. A few nurses from the home, some folks from the co-op, Ms. Cordova, and Janine. She wore a blue dress I used to compliment, the one I always said made her look like spring after a long winter. She stood up and read the first psalm. Her voice cracked once, but she kept going. Brandon showed up late, in a blazer that didn't fit and sunglasses that didn't hide much. He looked around like he was searching for something. A role, maybe. A stage. But there wasn't one. There was no inheritance, no letter, no warm parting words, just a folded program that read, "In loving memory of Dolores Ramos, rancher, fighter, mother by choice." He approached Janine after, asked how long she'd been involved. She smiled, calm and steady. "Long enough to matter," she said. He didn't stay long after that. The estate settled quietly. Janine used part of the money to open a small community garden near the edge of Amarillo. She planted peach trees first, said I always talked about how they reminded me of summers when Brandon was little. She named the space Second Harvest. She visits often, leaves flowers, talks to the wind. I imagine she tells me stories, updates, little things, and sometimes, when the light hits just right and the leaves rustle in that old familiar way, I like to believe I'm there too, not watching, not waiting, just, present. No longer someone's burden, no longer someone's forgotten name on a file, just a woman who lived, who learned too late what love isn't, but just in time found what it really is. If this story touched something deep in you, maybe a memory, a moment, or a wound you still carry, I'd love to hear it. Have you ever given your all to someone, only to be cast aside when you needed them most? Or maybe you were someone's Janine, quietly showing up when no one else did. Leave a comment and tell me your story. I read everyone. And if you've ever felt forgotten, I just want to say this. You still matter. Your story isn't over. Dolores thought hers was, until she took it back. Maybe today you start taking yours back too.